It's my wild Mustang in training's first farrier visit, and I was fascinated with how today unfolded and how positive reinforcement completely changed the trajectory of this visit. I've been exploring positive reinforcement with my Mustangs, and while I don't use it with every horse, I have found it to be a very helpful tool, especially with my more fearful Mustangs. Now let's go ahead and get into it, but first let me remind you that I'm not coming to you wearing an expert hat. My goal is to show you what intrigues me, in hopes that it arouses your own curiosity and causes you to dive into more of your own research. Okay, truthfully, I was pretty nervous going into this visit. I've been working hard to get Merlin ready to see the farrier, but I didn't quite feel like he was there yet. However, Scott, my farrier, was coming to do another horse, so we decided to at least try and see if we could do the fronts. This was definitely the big event of the week for me, and I felt like I was holding my breath until it was over. Now, in all honesty, my first time picking up his back feet was only 4 days ago, but I've been focusing on working on his front feet so they could be trimmed on this first visit. His back feet weren't so bad, so I figured that they could wait until next time. Before this visit, I had spent a lot of time introducing the rasp, trying different positions while rasping, and introducing new handlers. And yet, Merlin was still pretty wary of Scott coming in. My heart sank when I saw that initial reaction from Merlin so soon in the visit. Usually it's not a good sign to start out that way. Mustang or not, it's really embarrassing to have a horse that doesn't stand well. It's not the farrier's job to train the horse, that is solely my responsibility. And whenever my horse acts up, that is making his job harder and longer. And it's also just disrespectful of his time. So for me, it's really embarrassing when my horse isn't behaving well. So right now I'm not using positive reinforcement with Merlin, although I know I have it as a sort of lifeline if things continue to not go well. My goal is to not stay in positive reinforcement, but to transition over to negative reinforcement. And actually most people, whether they realize it or not, practice negative reinforcement. Think pressure and release. Negative reinforcement has a really bad connotation to it, but both positive and negative reinforcement are reinforcers of behavior. In simple terms, positive reinforcement means that something desirable was added to reinforce the behavior. Negative reinforcement means that something was removed to reinforce the behavior. So you might squeeze your horse to go, and the moment that he walks forward, you release. Now, my current preference is using negative reinforcement with some positive reinforcement depending on the horse. Now, back in my days before Mustangs, you would have never caught me using positive reinforcement, and Scott, my farrier, knows that very well. However, since working with Mustangs, I've really seen the value that positive reinforcement can bring. You've been seeing Merlin struggle through this visit, and it's about to get a little dicey, so it was time for a switch. I'm going to do the countdown thing, because I think it will help. That was the last straw for me, and I didn't want my farrier to be in a vulnerable position, so I switched over to positive reinforcement. Having seen in the past how much this helps Merlin, I was pretty confident that we would be able to get the job done. And kudos to my farrier for sticking with me. Don't worry, I'm going to fix this camera angle and explain what's going on in a second.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 8.
Okay, so first off, that chewing you hear is not Merlin. That is actually another horse behind the camera. I just didn't think about that when I set my camera up. So let me explain what's going on here. I actually started Merlin using positive reinforcement. Some of you may remember me sharing some resources from Mustang Camp. I didn't go very far in the program, so I'm not actually sure how they would recommend doing the horse's feet for the first time. But there were two important concepts that I was really able to grab a hold of and run with. Once you know a little bit of information, you can really start applying it to other similar situations. One of the concepts was the easy posture, or you might hear it referred to as manners in other positive reinforcement circles. There are probably a variety of names for it, but basically you want to teach the horse that you are going to bring them the treat, not the other way around. In the book from Mustang Camp, they use the cue easy to ask the horse to stand in a straight line with its head down and relaxed. Well, the second concept was adding a countdown, basically asking the horse to hold a posture, whether that's the easy posture or targeting a specific body part. With these two concepts, plus I would say learning how to target various body parts, you can do so much. Like I said, I really didn't get very far in that book, but these concepts I just really took with me, and I've been making my own combinations and just experimenting on my own. Thus far, in regards to the easy posture, I've been very lenient and mostly focusing on Merlin keeping his legs still for Scott. Now clearly, positive reinforcement has already made a big impact, and Scott is now able to get his job done. I am now able to breathe a little bit and move from a let's survive this appointment to hey, let's turn this into a training session.
Easy. 10, 9. Easy. 10, 9.
So right now, I'm starting to increase my expectations. When I ask Merlin for easy, I'm asking him to stand square with his head straight forward. If he turns away, I stop counting and wait for him to be straight again. I'm being a little bit lenient as I don't want to do it at the cost of perhaps him being bad for Scott again.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Deep. Has he pulled from you yet? Easy. Gosh, I almost think I could do this back. If you want to.
I mean, I'm going to try to pick them up.
Okay.
Like I mentioned earlier in the video, I had only ever picked up his back feet for the first time 4 days ago, and I hadn't done any of my farrier prep work on his back feet. But this transformation was just so incredible, it seemed like Scott might be able to at least pick up the feet. As someone who used to think that they would never ever practice positive reinforcement, seeing the power that it actually holds is really incredible. It's not that I thought positive reinforcement didn't work. It was more me being turned off by trainers who were acting holier than thou and that positive reinforcement was the only way. And then also some ineffective training where the horses just became really pushy and muggy, and I didn't really want a part of that. I think that positive reinforcement can really be misrepresented. And that creates this negative taste for a lot of people, including myself formerly. I think that both positive and negative reinforcement have a lot of misrepresentation. To be honest, sometimes it is a real misrepresentation, and sometimes it is a misunderstanding of how the process and how the training method actually works. And by that, I mean that there really are people who misrepresent what positive reinforcement is. I think a lot of people say they practice it, but they don't actually when you look into the science of it. Just because you have soft hands or try to create a positive learning experience does not mean you're using positive reinforcement. And on the flip side, you could have a totally effective positive reinforcement trainer accomplishing amazing things and have someone from the negative reinforcement side really misunderstand what positive reinforcement is and think it's all about feeding treats and giving happy experiences for the horse, and there's a lot more to the training method. Merlin had completely changed since when we started this visit, and he was doing so well that we decided to try having Scott pick up and maybe rasp the back feet. As you'll see from here to the end of the visit, Merlin decided to hang free a bit. Now this was something that was unusual for Merlin. I've typically seen this behavior around horses that are very relaxed, but I really questioned if Merlin was truly that level of relaxed. Because this was so unusual, it triggered me to look into it a little bit more, and I actually did learn something here. I didn't know that this is a behavior that is actually pretty common with geldings during positive reinforcement training. There are multiple reasons for this, but I'm not going to draw any conclusions here as there's more to it than you might think. However, I'll link the video that I found in the description box below. Now, you may have noticed that instead of rasping, Scott is actually using the hoof nippers on Merlin. I couldn't believe how well Merlin was doing. Here, I decided to stop using the positive reinforcement and just see how Merlin would act.
Wow.
So he appears to be a little bit more unsettled, but is still very, very good. This is just incredible. I can't believe he is at this point from where he started today. I wouldn't have imagined that he would have had his feet done like this. And this is exactly why I've been supplementing my negative reinforcement training with positive reinforcement if the horse is having a hard time or is especially fearful.
Is that the best one yet?
I didn't mean to put it down. I had it up the whole time.
I know, I ate humble pie on just positive reinforcement.
I bet you did. Well, it worked.
Yeah.
Clearly.
So Scott went on to trim and rasp Merlin's final foot, and Merlin did amazing. Without a doubt, I can say that this is because of positive reinforcement. Otherwise, this appointment would not have happened. It's a huge relief to have his feet finally done. Here's a before and an after of his front feet. And take a look at these hoof clippings. Quite a bit came off. A few days later, Merlin also saw the vet for a sheath cleaning. Similar to the farrier visit, I used positive reinforcement while Merlin received the sedative that was needed for the procedure. I wasn't able to get it on camera, but Merlin handled the needle very, very well. I simply did the countdown as he was receiving the injection. While he was sedated, I had the vet check his teeth, and they were actually very sharp, so we went ahead and did his first float. So now Merlin is all up to date on everything and has made some huge milestones. It's amazing to me how positive reinforcement was such an important part of allowing Merlin to receive care that was essential for his well-being. It was truly incredible for me to witness.